Wyoming Storm Rescue. January 1888. Wyoming Territory. The wind roared like a wild beast across the endless plains, driving snow in a blinding sideways fury. Clara Hensley clung to the reins, her fingers numb despite her thick gloves. 10 miles back, her wagon's wheel had shattered, forcing her to trudge forward, dragging her heavy trunk through the deepening drifts. Her boots were soaked, her feet frozen, her scarf crusted with ice. Somewhere behind her the trail had vanished. Somewhere ahead, she hoped, was shelter. She hadn't planned to die today. A shadow flickered through the white veil ahead. Clara blinked, heart racing. A horse, no, 2, emerged. A rider hunched against the storm. She stumbled, collapsing to her knees in the snow. The rider reined in sharply. "Miss?" He dismounted, snow exploding around him, and knelt before her. His voice was calm, steady. "You hurt?" She shook her head, lips too stiff to form words. He saw her condition anyway, how close she was to breaking. "I've got you," he said. His eyes, sharp and kind, held hers. Clara had never seen anyone look at her like she was worth saving. Not in all her years in Nebraska, yearning for someone to see her. His coat, heavy buffalo hide dusted with snow, draped broad shoulders. He stood tall yet moved gently, lifting her as if she were weightless. "I'm not leaving you here," he said. "Name's Elias Ward." "Clara," she whispered. "Clara Hensley." He wrapped a coarse wool blanket around her, swung up behind her on his saddle, and held her steady against his chest. They rode through the storm, the world a blur of white. His horse, a sturdy bay with a crooked blaze, moved with purpose, trusting its rider completely. Clara leaned into Elias, too cold to think, but warmed by his arms. Hours later, a cabin appeared. Darkness had fallen, but the glow of a fire spilled through the windows. Elias carried her inside, the heat hitting like a tide. He set her by the hearth, kneeling to untie her scarf and gloves, easing off her boots. Her feet were pale, nearly frostbitten. "You walk too far," he said, concern sharpening his tone. "Should have stayed put." "Wagon broke," she murmured. "No choice." He filled a basin with warm water, setting her feet in it. "Slow," he said. "Too fast, and it'll hurt worse." She nodded, watching him. His movements were practiced, stoking the fire, fetching tea from a shelf. He'd survived storms before, helped others, stayed calm when panic would have won. "Where were you out there?" he asked, handing her a tin cup of tea. She stared into it. "Headed to Sheridan, got a teaching job." "Alone?" She hesitated. "Yes." He didn't flinch, just nodded, sitting across from her. Silence settled, broken only by the fire's crackle and the wind's howl. "Lost my school in Nebraska," she said after a while. "Town shrank, no kids left to teach, nothing to stay for." His eyes, thoughtful, held hers. Not many women would make that trip solo. Not many women have a choice. He nodded again, understanding more than he said. That night, Elias gave her his bed and took the floor, waving off her protests. "You need it more." Morning came, the wind quieter, snow thick outside. He made breakfast. Eggs, beans, hardtack. Clara ate, still aching but thawing. "I'll ride you to Sheridan when the trail's clear," he said. "Maybe 2 days." She met his gaze. "You don't have to. I owe you too much already." "Not about owing," he said. "You needed help." "That's enough." She stared, unaccustomed to kindness without strings. They spent the day tending his horse, splitting wood, patching gear. Clara noticed his quiet purpose, how he listened when she spoke, never raising his voice. That night, snow fell gently. She stood by the window, wrapped in his coat, watching the pines sway. Elias joined her. "Cold?" She shook her head. "Just thinking." "About?" How you rode through that storm, like it was fate. He looked at her. Was just checking my traps, she smiled faintly. Still, you found me. He didn't reply, just brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers warm. They stood there, snow falling, a quiet connection growing. Next morning, the sky cleared. Elias packed supplies, tying her trunk to his second horse. I can ride, Clara said. You don't need to carry me. He met her eyes. You could, but if you fall, you might not get up. She flushed, looking away. Didn't mean it like that, he said softly. I'd carry you again if you'd let me. His voice, steady and certain, wrapped around her like his blanket had. All right, she said. He lifted her onto the horse, settling behind her, arms secure. As they rode, she leaned into him, her heartbeat syncing with his. In that moment, she felt love in his quiet strength. They reached Sheridan by afternoon, hooves crunching on packed snow. Smoke curled from chimneys. Townsfolk bustled between the mercantile and livery. A dog barked nearby. Elias helped her down, hands steady. I'll stable the horses, he said. Check the boarding house for your room. Clara glanced at the two-story building, its sign swaying. Suppose I should. He studied her. This where you want to be? Wind tugged her hair. It's where the letter said the school was. At the boarding house, a stern woman with grey hair eyed her. Clara Hensley? Yes. Room's upstairs, second door. Got linens? Clara nodded. You'll need coal. Bins out back. The room was sparse. Bed, washstand, window overlooking snow-dusted roofs. Clara unpacked slowly, her dresses and lesson notes all she had. No keepsakes from Nebraska. Nothing there felt worth keeping. Evening brought a knock. Elias stood there, a sack of coal over his shoulder. Didn't want you cold tonight. She let him in. You didn't have to. He set the sack by the stove. I know. Staying in town? She asked. Stable loft. Heading back tomorrow. She hesitated. Thank you, Elias, for everything. He nodded. Don't need to keep saying it. Silence fell, heavy with unspoken feeling. Check the schoolhouse, he said. It's boarded up. No smoke. Looks empty. Her brow furrowed. The letter said they needed a teacher. She pulled the smudged envelope from her trunk. Maybe they did, he said. Maybe things changed. Clara's voice wavered. If there's no job, I've nowhere else. He looked at her, steady, not pitying. You don't have to decide tonight. Feels like all I do is decide, she said, where to go, who to trust, when to leave. He paused, thumb brushing his palm. Not everyone's worth your trust. But some are, she met his gaze. And you? Should I trust you? That's for you to decide. She lit the lamp, poured tea, their fingers brushing as he took the cup. I thought I'd find something here, she said, sitting on the bed. A place to belong. Elias sat across, chair creaking. Maybe you did, just not where you expected. Snow glowed under street lamps outside. Do you regret staying here? She asked. Used to think I would, he said. Not anymore. A place to stay. Florence leaned against the door, her hand pressed to her chest, feeling the steady beat of her heart. The storm had passed, not just the snow that had blanketed the town, but the weight she'd carried inside. Cade had sat with her through it, his quiet presence like an anchor. I'd like to see your land, she said softly. He didn't reply at once, just looked at her with that calm certainty. I'll ride back tomorrow. If you still want to come, I'll be here. He stood, setting his empty cup down. Rest well, Florence? She opened the door and outside the snow had stopped. I'll see you soon, she whispered. He tipped his hat and vanished down the stairs. She closed the door, her breath steady. Not because the storm was over, but because someone had walked through it with her. Before dawn, the boarding house was silent, the horizon glowing faintly behind the rooftops. Florence dressed quickly. pinning her hair tightly, her boots heavy against the cold floor. Frost clung to the railings outside, and the wagon tracks had frozen into sharp ruts. She walked toward the stable at the town's edge, where Cade had said he'd stay. The stable boy, a lanky youth with straw-colored hair, nodded. He's in the loft. Tends his horse like family. She climbed the ladder, her gloves gripping the icy wood. Cade sat against a hay bale, rolling his bedroll with steady hands, his coat draped over a beam, sleeves pushed up to reveal faint scars on his forearm. "You're early," he said, not looking up. "Couldn't sleep," she replied. He tied the roll and met her eyes. "Still want to see the land?" "Yes." He stood, brushing hay from his trousers. "It's a long ride. We'll stay there tonight." He nodded toward the ladder. "I'll saddle the horses." They rode past the town's last buildings, into the low hills rising westward. The snow crunched under the horses' hooves, the air still, carrying sound far. Florence heard Cade's steady breathing beside her. As the town faded, she asked, "Have you always lived here?" His gaze stayed on the trail. "Came from Colorado as a boy. Uncle raised me after my father died. He ran cattle on the North Range." "Do you ever go back?" "Nothing there. Mother left after the funeral." "Don't know where she went." Florence swallowed. "I'm sorry," he shrugged. "You carry what stays." They rode in silence through scattered pines, snow dusting the branches like lace. The trail narrowed, a frozen creek glinting below. When they reached his land, Florence felt its quiet strength before he spoke. The cabin sat between two hills, a split-rail fence along one side, a lean-to nearby, and a weathered smokehouse in the distance. Cade dismounted, helping her down. Her boots crunched on the snow as she took it in. "It feels built to last," she said. His voice was low. "I tried to make it that way." Inside, the cabin was simple, clean. Cade lit a fire, hung her coat, and set a kettle on. She stood by the window, watching light play across the hills. "I didn't know land could feel like this." "Like what?" "Like it's listening." He paused, then said, "That's why I stayed. No noise here that doesn't belong." They ate by the fire. Bread from a tin, stew thawed by the stove. Later, Cade lit a tin lantern, its glow softening the room. "I found something," he said, pulling a folded paper from a drawer. "Asked in town before we left. The man who posted the teaching notice died 2 months ago. Fell from his horse past the ridge." Florence unfolded the letter, its ink faded but legible. "So, there's no position but now. But there are children in these hills. Not many, but enough to teach if someone stayed." She looked at him, the lantern light in his eyes. "You think I should stay?" "I think you already want to." She folded the letter. "What about wages, supplies? I can help. I trade cattle twice a year. I'll set some aside." Her voice softened. "You'd do that for me?" "I'd do it because you're here, because I want you to stay." She stood, the letter in hand. "What would that mean?" His gaze was steady. Nothing hurried. "It means I'd make room for you, not out of obligation, but because I walked you through one storm, and I'd walk through 10 more to keep you near." Florence stepped closer, the silence between them alive, full of something solid. "I didn't expect this," she said. "Neither did I." She reached for his hand, his fingers warm, unwavering. For the first time since Kansas, the ground felt firm beneath her. The next morning, frost traced the windows in delicate patterns. Florence stood barefoot on the cabin floor, a blanket around her shoulders, watching dawn creep over the hills. The stove's warmth lingered, pine ash scenting the air. Cade moved quietly behind her, setting a kettle over the coals. "That letter," she said, voice rough from sleep. "Would the families here really send their children without a proper schoolhouse? They'd need to trust it's worth the ride," he said, pouring water into a mug. "But they'd come if they saw someone staying for good." Florence sat at the table, the blanket slipping. "Then I'll start with what I have. I've taught in barns, by broken windows, with just chalk and boards. A place to stay. Cade placed the mug before her. You won't face it alone this time. She ran her finger along the cup's edge, then met his gaze. If someone asks what I am to you, he answered without pause. You're the woman who stayed. Later, they saddled horses and rode toward the ridge where Alma Burkhead, a widow, lived with her 2 sons and a handful of milk cows. The morning ride was slow, the trails tight, snow-laden branches crowding in. Florence gripped the reins, her balance surer than it had been. At Alma's homestead, the widow stood with a pail, a kerchief shielding her ears from the wind. Her boys peered from the doorway, pale and wary. Heard you rode in with the storm, Alma said, eyes sharp. I did, Florence replied. But I'm here to stay. The elder boy stepped onto the porch. We got no books, Florence smiled. I've got stories enough to last till spring. Alma studied her, then nodded. Teaching my boys? If I allow it? Florence nodded back. If you'll let me? Alma said. Stories won't be enough, but it's a start. They rode on, stopping at homes where doors opened or folks leaned over fences. By dusk, 3 families agreed to send their children if Florence could find a place to teach. Back at the cabin, Cade handed her charcoal and a scrap of sawed board. She sat by the fire, sketching a schoolhouse plan, brows furrowed. There's a clearing west, Cade said. Flat, close enough for a morning's ride. Got lumber from the old corral, and I know where to cut more. Florence looked up. You'll help build it? He crouched beside her. I'll raise the beams. You'll build it. She nodded. I will. That night, with the fire low, Florence stood outside, stars sharp in the cold. Cade joined her, breath clouding. I never thanked you, she said. He waited. I thought I was done searching for someone to walk with, she continued. But you stayed, asking nothing. He replied, I stayed because you sparked something in me. Her hand found his, steady. Then let's stay, here, together. His grip tightened, warm, pleased with. We will. They stood, snow soft underfoot, sky vast above. 2 souls who'd weathered the hardest season and found something unyielding. By late March, the ground thawed enough to hold posts. Cade drove the last one in, sledge swinging. Florence, sleeves rolled, hair braided, held twine. The schoolhouse frame rose in the western clearing, its beams catching morning light like something newborn. All timbers next, Cade said, checking the posts. I'll haul them tomorrow. Florence looped twine over a nail. I'll start benches, 1 a day. I'll have enough before the roof's up. He brushed sawdust from his hands. You'll need a rest before then. She met his eyes. When it's done? He looked at her, the weight of it settling in her chest. You took to this land like it was waiting for you, he said. I don't just want to stand on it, she replied. I want to give it something back. That night, on the porch steps, boots off, snowmelt dripping, Cade oiled his rifle, hands steady. Florence leaned against a post. What would you have been with more choices? She asked. He paused. Maybe this, but sooner. With the land? She asked. He turned the barrel. No, with you. The porch creaked as she slid closer. You never asked what I wanted before this, he said. Figured you'd tell me when ready. Her voice softened. I want to stay, not just to teach, but to build my life with yours. He set the rifle down. Then build it. I'll work beside you. Weeks passed with purpose. The schoolhouse grew, boards placed with care. Alma's boys helped, hauling stones for the hearth, smoothing the floor. Other children came, brought by parents, their eyes curious but cautious. Florence kept a ledger noting names and ages, weaving lessons into her days. Spelling while cooking, arithmetic while mending neighbors' clothes. One evening, as spring thunder murmured, Cade brought a muslin-wrapped parcel. Inside was a gold band. "Traded the spare mare and some hides," he said. Florence touched it, voice soft. "You didn't have to." He replied, "I wanted you to have something chosen." Her eyes shone. "Put it on me." He did, careful, then kissed her, deep and sure, a kiss earned over time. 3 days later they wed under the schoolhouse's half-finished rafters, pine boughs pinned above. Alma brought preserves, a neighbour brought wild honey. Children offered creekbed flowers tied with twine. Cade wore his cleanest shirt, Florence her best dress, hem mended. Their vows were simple, spoken plainly, every word meant. As the sun set, guests rode off, and Cade led her home to the cabin, fire already lit. Years later, the schoolhouse stood, weathered but solid. More families settled nearby, drawn by its steadiness. Children grew, some returning with their own. Florence taught, hair silvering, her lessons sharp, voice clear. Cade kept the land, fences fixed, fields turned. They never left, never wanted to. Each evening, as light slanted through the cabin window, they sat, hands clasped, hearts full of a life built together, one no wind could steal.